Now we're live.
Now we're live.
Hello, everybody out there. I'm actually going to jump on here real quick. Wait for a couple people real fast so I can share this, but I got to find Brian real quick because I can't share it from the other one. And of course, it's always when you're live that you're like, hurry up and go. Are we all set up on Instagram?
Well, I think we are, but boss lady told me not to worry if it goes through great. If not, we'll do it next time.
Oh, okay. So we are women of the FWA. I am Veronica with SWI in Casper, Wyoming. And I have Yadira here with me. And I'm super excited to have this conversation. And topic of the conversation is having hard conversations. I know in my role within SWI, some of them are really, really uncomfortable. And you have to kind of tread pretty lightly. I know you, dear, you run into the same kind of situations, HR, performance.
Absolutely, yes, definitely. It's a topic that nobody likes. Nobody wants to have. A lot of times we kind of skivvy around hard conversations, but it's never good. I think it's definitely important to head on.
And take care of it ahead of time, because one of the things, I mean, I can tell you from experience, the longer you put off these hard conversations, the harder and the worst they get.
Yeah.
And then, people get super argumentative about the conversation the longer you let it go on, or you avoid the conversation. So I guess that's like the number one piece of advice that I could tell anybody that has to have these conversations is to start it right away. Start having the conversations. Don't wait. And then my biggest piece of advice is be factual. Factual. When you're having these hard conversations, there's a lot of emotions that come back at you. Some people are a little bit softer. Or I don't know. They just, they absorb that, and then, they see somebody crying or upset or, whatever the case may be. And they're kind of like, oh God. We always document everything. So when these conversations have to be had, I've got a really good list, of certain instances. Do you guys communicate internally? Do you, make that list so when you have to have these conversations?
So it's a lot of back and forth between myself and Brian. It's a lot of times he says it's lonely at the top. It's lonely where you can't share a lot of those things. And I'm trying to reiterate this over and over and over. Like, you can't have these type of conversations. If you are going to address an employee about something, you can't let your personal emotions be known in front of your other employees that you might have, because you just can't have that. So I try to reiterate, like, if you want to vent about something, because we all do. We all vent about an employee. We all vent about, whatever it is that we might have going on with a certain employee. But it has to stay between us. It has to stay between you're at the management level or at the owner's level, until you address whatever issue or circumstance you have with until you have that uncomfortable conversation with the employee that you're having an issue with.
Absolutely. So, and we kind of do the rule of 3 in SWI. And this is something that when I first started, I kind of brought to the table, because let's face it, we work a lot of hours with each other. You're not going to get every personality to match up perfectly and everybody to get along and sing Kumbaya. You're just not. So we actually do
that, huh?
Yeah. So we do the rule of 3. So if I hear something about another team member from one individual, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and jot that down. And I may make some crew adjustments. I might wait a little bit and see if it's the same person that comes back and kind of rearrange your crew. But usually by the second person or the third person that comes around, if I'm hearing the same consistent complaints, then it's like, okay, now, I officially know that we have an issue.
Yeah, for sure.
Our very favorite, Tracy Gurry Ink Signs and Decals is in the house. Hello, hello.
Hello.
So let's talk about the emotions, because when you have these hard conversations, whether if it is a performance issue or an attendance issue or personality issue, you're not quite sure what you're going to get from the other side of the desk. So I kind of want to hear your worst story of having these conversations.
I think it has happened when you end up terminating an employee and they get defensive about whatever might be the reason you're terminating them, and they want to force themselves into the property. So at that point, if you got to be able to have somebody else who's there with you. You can't do it on your own, in my opinion. You want to have for security reasons, for liability, you want to make sure that there's somebody who accompanies this person go back to whatever your property is to get their tools or whatnot. But yeah, at one time I had to tell somebody they had to get away from the property. They had to leave. I'm going to call the cops.
Oh yeah.
Until there's somebody else here to help me, with the situation, you can't step on the property, period.
So I do want to make a quick disclosure on that, and to please know your state's local HR laws on that. When you're having these hard conversations, you cannot just pull anyone in. You can't pull in someone that is not in a management or supervisor or ownership position.
Yes.
So I do want to throw that out there just to make sure that everybody that's watching is protected.
Absolutely.
I've had to have those hard conversations. We're spread out all over the state. And so sometimes having, Mark or Alan or Dan or somebody around in that position, it's not feasible for them to be in my office to have these meetings. So when that kind of stuff happens, it is a conference call. There is another set of ears witnessing, and there's another, we have cameras in our offices for security purposes. But getting on a conference call and then just making sure that you have somebody else on the property, that you're not there by yourself, because I've run into some really angry people, throwing things. And I'm kind of like, how far are you going to take this?
Yeah, I think it's important to have somebody from upper management present. And bottom line, if there's nobody there at the time, they just have to wait until somebody whose management gets there,
Absolutely. I mean, I've had people sit out in our kind of lobby area, hey, I need to have a meeting with you, but I've got so-and-so coming, give me just a few minutes. And sometimes it's a matter like, hey, I've got to wrap this up. I know we had a meeting at 6 and you're trying to buy that time. And the ones that get really angry are the ones that think they're getting away with whatever's happening.
Yeah. Yep.
In my opinion, they're the ones that you've talked to 2 or 3 times about a situation. And so then you've decided that it's just best to part ways. And they're the ones that get the most angry.
Right. It does always seems that way. Like they're the ones that you kind of stay up all night thinking how are they going to react?
Yes.
They're not going to take it well. We already know they're not going to take it well.
And you're kind of like, you've given me no choice. Why are you so angry? I don't understand why you're mad.
Yes.
And Mark can attest to this. When people get mad, I have a tendency to laugh because I am such a factual, like it's all about the facts to me, not emotion, not, you know, my feelings are hurt, none of that. I'm such a factual person that when somebody loses their cool, I giggle about it. Like, that is not a good trait to have when you're having these hard conversations. No. I will tell you. And there are times that these hard conversations are done, and I'm just kind of like, whoa, what was that? Because you really just want to shake these people and be like, you did this.
Yeah.
You left us no choice.
Yeah.
And then I think another hard part, and this is anybody that's in the management, or higher field, is when you get those that then give you a complete sob story. And you're trying to be empathetic, not sympathetic, empathetic to the situation. But at the same time, you have to do what's best for your organization and what's best for your team and your company culture. And overall, that's why we're all here.
Yeah.
So that is probably like one of the hardest ones for me, are the ones that come in and they all of a sudden unleash all of this stuff. And you're sitting there going, well, why am I just now hearing about this? If you've dealt with, a loss of a family member, or, you're going through a divorce or a separation, or you're trying to deal, how to get kids to school and who's going to be doing this and who's going to be doing that. It's really hard for me at that point in that conversation to not be like, well, why didn't you tell us before we got to this point? Because now I can't do anything.
Exactly. It's really, really tough. And because from a management's position, I feel like it's not any easier, but it's different because you have, you're following orders. You are ultimately, somebody higher up has made the decision and you're just a soldier and you're doing your job and you're following orders.
You're the messenger.
Yeah, exactly. So when it's like you're really truly at the top, it's like when you hear that sob story and they feel like you have, like, their livelihood is like, you ultimately have the decision to either, give them another opportunity or not. It's hard. And it's not no matter how many times you've done it, it doesn't make it any easier at all.
No, like I will definitely say that it does not, it does not get easier. You just learn how to fake your way through that moment and through those conversations. And then be able to kind of, then process and break it down. I mean, I couldn't tell you that, still to have to terminate someone and have that conversation at the end of the day, I don't feel like I got beat up, even if I know it's for the best, even if I know that this is what we have to do for our organization and what is best, it's still at the end of the day, I want to go home and have a couple drinks and feel like it could have been the best day ever.
Yeah.
And then have to do that. And you feel like you get your butt kicked.
You do.
And I don't know how else to explain it. So Michaela said communication is absolutely communication and documentation. When you're dealing with team members that you have to have difficult conversations with, make sure that you've got all of it written down and that you're able to stay emotionally detached from the situation. Stick to the facts, stick to the logic, remind them that you're not going to be talked to a certain way. We've, during hard conversations, even that didn't result in termination, during hard conversations, there've been times where we're in the middle of it and I can see that it's escalating and I'm like, let's take a 5-minute break. Why don't you go outside, go calm down for a minute. And then when you're done, let's come back in and finish this conversation and come to a resolution. Do not be afraid to do that. Because then it kind of lets everybody take a step back, take that deep breath. And, it just might be a hard conversation, not a termination. Exactly. I don't want to think that this whole live is strictly just about that because there's so many hard conversations we have. But don't be afraid. Stick to your boundaries. that you will be respectful, you will not yell at me, you will not talk to me that way, and that we need to get through this conversation, and why don't you just go ahead and take 5 minutes.
I think your internet is lagging.
Of course it is, because I'm trying to stream from my phone. Is it caught up? Hopefully. Why do I always have internet issues?
I think it's slightly better.
Okay. We'll give it a minute. If not, then I'll switch over to the office. But making sure that you're sticking to not allow people to talk to you in a disrespectful fashion. Don't be afraid to say that.
Yeah. Respect. Bottom line is respect is the most important thing, in my opinion. Even when you're having those hard conversations, or every conversation is just respect.
Yes. And having respect for the person you're talking to as well.
Yeah.
What sometimes is easier said than done.
Yeah, for sure.
We've all been there. But yeah,
emotions are high, and every human has emotions. So we'd be robots if we didn't. And we all have our differences and opinions. And we all tend to get, whether we accept it or not, we all tend to get a little defensive when somebody points out something that we may be doing wrong, or something that we could improve in, or something that is habitually happening that you're not supposed to be doing. So
one of the things that I do that's a little bit different is I actually, when we're talking to that team member and we're having these conversations, I ask questions and have them answer them for me. Instead of me saying you, mm-hmm. or, something along those lines, I'd be like, hey, thanks for coming in, just wondering, why do you think you're here today? Or, hey, I heard about a situation that happened out on a job site. Can you tell me what conversation or situation?
Yeah.
If they're looking at me all dumbfounded, I'm like, okay, well, I heard about this situation. Why don't you tell me your side of it? So then what happens is they really start to take a different type of accountability mm-hmm. versus me telling them, you did this, you did this, you did this, and them saying, yes, I did.
Right. I think that's really very important is, kind of asking, like you said, asking the questions. I want to see things from your point of view, from your perspective. Can you tell me why this happened, or how are you, why did this happen? And a lot of times you see it from their perspective, and it's okay. You kind of understand why it could just be a mistake,
a difference, right? And one of the things that with our team is I don't just automatically take everybody's word for it. Obviously we have foremen that have been with the company forever that have a level of trust like no other. I mean, I trust them with my life, my livelihood.
Yeah.
But you still need to get that other person's take on the situation before you really address on any type of discipline or, decision that you're going to make. Although there are times that you have team members and you've heard from 3/4 of your team that this one particular person, and at that point you're just like, this unfortunately just isn't working
the
out.
Right person to have on your team, in my opinion.
Correct.
When you have numerous people telling you the same thing, it's just you're not going to be able to fix it.
No. And then if you continue to push that relationship with your team and 3/4 of your team are telling you it's not working, and you put this person back out in the field, you have started to absolutely demolish your company culture.
Create animosity between them, and management, create animosity with you. It's just entirely.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so, we're not all about, just instant termination. You do try to maybe rearrange some things, but you really have to listen to your team before you have the hard conversations with that team member. We're fortunate in Wyoming that we are a right to work state. We can terminate anybody at any given time. We do not have to provide a reason. Our favorite line is, after further review, we just feel that this relationship isn't right. And that it's best for us to part ways for your personal benefit as well as ours.
Yeah. We're fortunate in the way that it's kind of the same thing here in Nevada. And let me tell you, I cannot imagine being in a different state where you have to have reasons,
all of these reasons,
or exactly to terminate an employee or to lay them off, or I can't imagine. But we're fortunate the same way that is Wyoming. We are a right to work state.
Absolutely. And, of course, they can file for unemployment. And if you don't have your ducks in a row, then, you're going to have to pay that unemployment unless you've got all of your stuff that you need to. But in Wyoming, we don't have to notify the employee of why they were terminated, which kind of opens it up a little bit to when those conversations escalate and you're trying to terminate them and get their belongings and to exit the property. It kind of opens it up where they want to be more argumentative. But that's where your documentation in your HR files and in your management files
are very important. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I always tell every one of our employees and management as well, like, what's in the employee's file. Like, you need to document. If there's an issue and it's an arising issue and it's an over and over, we got to have that documentation in that file.
Well, and we empower our team that, if there's a conversation, if somebody's late or whatever, drop me an email. Send an email to myself. It goes in their file. Even if it's never a conversation again, great.
Correct.
That's the goal.
You're absolutely right.
And I know there are some HR laws out there about what is over documenting. I have been fortunate enough to never run into that issue. Yeah. If it is a large enough issue to have a conversation to me, it is imperative to have some type of documentation in the file. Mm-hmm. That is an instant. Another thing that I wish a lot of people in my position knew is that an email to yourself from yourself, like to your work email, becomes a legally binding document when it's date and time stamped.
Correct.
Which covers your butt.
Absolutely.
That could be as far as, like, if you have to get the police involved later on, you can print that email and show the police, listen, he was told not to come back. He was told not to trespass on this property. Here's my documentation of my meeting notes on this date and time that I talked to this individual. That's a CYA.
Yes, definitely. It's very valid. An email, like you said, dated and stamped for sure.
Yes, it becomes a legal document. It went through a business server at that point. They can pull it off the server information if it ever goes to a legal standpoint.
Just in case. Just in case. Just in case.
I'm CYA. Another thing that I do is after every one of these hard conversation meetings, I actually send myself an email of a quick jot down of what was talked about, what the questions were asked, how the answers were, what the feedback was from that team member, what was their, did they get angry? Did they get upset? Were they accountable for their actions? Were they not accountable for their actions? Did they blame it on everybody else?
Yeah, I don't do that, but that's actually a really good process to implement, because you want to have that documented for, if you need it in the future.
And it takes 10 minutes max. If you're talking like an hour-long meeting, your meeting minutes and those highlight key points is not going to take you that long. We all type fast in the office, so it's quick. Doesn't have to be formal, doesn't have to be in a letter, doesn't have to be, structured. It really just has to be time and date stamped as close to that meeting as you possibly can. Sometimes it's an hour later, which I don't recommend because a lot of details can get lost in an hour, but definitely doing it as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. Another thing that, we have our foremen or other managers that have to have these hard conversations. They've sent me a text right after it's happened. I then screenshot it and I put it in that employee's file. That becomes legal because at that point it's time and date stamped.
Absolutely.
And there's, a trick back. So hard conversations are never easy. And the anxiety, but I get anxiety at the thought.
We all have to have them. It's a part of life, whether it's in your business or it's in your personal relationships or your siblings. It's just
absolutely
it's a part of life, and it's the only way we can get past. Only way we can grow. Absolutely. It's the only way we can learn, and only way. Sometimes we don't like people pointing out what our flaws might be, but we ourselves don't see them. And it takes somebody else to bring them up, for you to see them,
Right. And make sure that you're factual. Make sure that you, as the person that's having to initiate this conversation, rip off the Band-Aid. Don't let things build. You constantly hear about any relationships that when you keep sweeping things under the rug, eventually you're going to trip over the rug.
Absolutely.
And you're going to land on your face.
Yes.
There's no other way but that. So making sure that you're factual, making sure we're ripping off the Band-Aid, making sure that you yourself stay calm, that you don't raise your voice, that you're not using, foul language. Yes, that is hard for me because I am a potty mouth. And also making sure that the person that you're talking to is respecting your boundaries as well. Let them know. Don't be afraid to say, hey, this is not okay. Or why don't we take 5 minutes? Why don't we step away so we can both regroup or, take a minute. Don't be afraid to do that. And definitely make sure that if this is a conversation that you are worried about escalating on any level, that somebody else is available to listen, even if it's via phone that is in management position or higher. And then somebody else is around.
Yeah.
Just to make sure. And don't be afraid to tell people to leave the property and don't come back.
Yeah.
I've had to tell people in the middle of it, if you don't leave, I will be calling the police, and pick up the phone and start to dial.
Yeah. I've been there before. And like I said, with that one employee, it's just, you get heated in the moment, but, it's hard to stay calm, but you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another reason you have to stay calm is because if you don't, you're opening yourself and your organization up to even more liability. Yes. Just because they're behaving like a jackass doesn't mean that you
mean that you want to defend yourself. You want to say, we gave you plenty of opportunities, or we gave you this, or we gave you that, and you at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. So it's all about respecting your employee and them giving you the respect that you need at the time. And if you've decided to call it quits between the employee and employer, it's about putting an end to it, because it's
right. And it's never easy. It's never easy for any of us. A lot of us, still get anxiety at the thought of having these conversations, just because I think the part that when my anxiety gets to me is because sometimes I'm not quite sure how this person's going to react.
Yeah.
And I'm a mom. So there's times that I'm like, man, I know like they're struggling or they got kids at home or, unfortunately you have to turn off that voice. You are there to make sure that your organization is operating at the best it could possibly operate, and make sure that you're bringing in good team members and everybody's being treated equally.
Yeah.
So there's times you go home and you're just like, I got my butt kicked. Yeah. She's mean as hell. She is not mean. I know that's Colby. You're just mad because she treats the puppies better than she treats you. Like,
Right.
let's be real. Those are her babies.
So one of the questions that I had was, one of the things that I've kind of ran into is like pay raises and pay, when an employee is requesting a pay raise, like and you feel like they're not exactly deserving of a pay raise yet. How do you address that?
So this is actually a great conversation because SWI does things so different. We keep an eye on our team super, super close. And everybody that is here, there's not been one that has asked for a pay increase. So if that tells you about our team members. But we've had these conversations.
Yeah.
I've been here for 6 months, blah, 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 blah.
Right, exactly.
And really it comes down to, if you want to be paid more, you should be doing the job that you're wanting to be paid for.
Yeah.
So currently we hired you at this rate and this is the job you're doing. So if you're wanting to be paid more, then you should be doing more.
Mm-hmm.
And we let them know we're keeping an eye on you. We talk to our foreman all the time. We talk to other team members all the time. Our foreman will be the first one that, hey, this guy is absolutely killing it. And he's doing X, Y, and Z. And he started after these guys, but he's doing, all of this other stuff. And we let them know, if you want to know why you think somebody else passed you by, is because, well, what is that one person doing different than what you're doing?
Right. Uh-huh.
And if you want a pay increase, you should be doing the work that you want to be paid for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard one. We've had some really good team members that are brought on and that we're paying them for a particular position. And, then they kind of get passed, but they're vital in the position that they're in. They're just not taking the initiative to move forward.
Right.
So it kind of brings it back to them. It makes them be a little bit more accountable for what they're doing. And a lot of times what that conversation ends up to be is, well, what exactly do I need to do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Let me tell you.
Let's put it down in writing. Let me tell you what's expected.
Let's make a plan.
Yeah.
Let's write down some action items. Let's write down some goals. And they're either going to step up or they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And then that really tells you where they are a good fit in your establishment, or if they're not a good fit anymore because they're not driven to improve.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a fine one, because if you have a lot of people on your team that are not wanting to excel themselves, then do you think they're really wanting to excel the company?
No.
Track productivity, more sections per man hours, more than an hour, not to oversimplify. Yes. And no, in my opinion. I don't want to get crucified here. Yes. Are you being more efficient? Do you have less callbacks? Are you doing things the way that up to our standards? So it's kind of this is one of those tricky conversations, because I can say, absolutely, you go install more sections of fence and I'll give you a pay increase. But am I going to jeopardize quality? Are we going to get crappy product at that time, because that's what I gave them as a goal, is strictly per section, but now I've got callbacks left and right. So really, how beneficial?
And those can end up, those callbacks can end up costing you a lot of money in labor, for sure.
Or you're paying to do the job. You've lost double the amount of money.
Yeah.
And so when we set goals for our team members in these kinds of situations that are asking for pay increases, we never say you need to go out and install more sections of fence.
Mm-hmm.
It gets into, I would like you to learn how to set posts to eye, not using a string line, to height, make sure everything's good, be able to dig and set, and that you be able to do this consistently for the next 5 projects. After that, come in and talk to me. that at that point, to me, is definitely worth, an increase or to be able to adjust some wages, because now they're more beneficial to my team.
Absolutely.
They might not be in that foreman situation, in that foreman position yet, but they're going to be more beneficial to our foreman that they're teamed up with.
Yeah.
So how you address that with your team and how your structure is set. But I would definitely recommend smaller goals versus just, you just don't want to put yourself in a situation.
Yeah. Very interesting. I like it.
So yeah, what other ones you got?
What other ones? I was told by my boss to make sure that I kept it about 30 minutes.
Yes, Susan. Yes. I'm surprised both of our phones are not going off. Although she's out to dinner with her uncle and hopefully not paying attention to us. So, thank you, Yadira, for jumping on with me. It's been a few weeks since I've actually been able to get on a live, so I was excited to get on here with you.
No, thank you guys. Thank you for jumping on it too. I think that's all I had.
Perfect. I want to thank you, everybody who commented. Continue to comment, whether if you're on the Women of FWA private group or the big group or our personal pages. We'll definitely get back to you. If there's any part of this conversation that you feel like we did not touch base on, please reach out to us. These conversations are not one and done. They're ongoing as different issues and concerns arise. So don't be afraid to comment, reach out. Make sure for Women of FWA, there are 2 Facebook pages. There is an Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, and email, YouTube.
Yeah,
we're kind of all over the place. We've taken over. Brian, who? So I hope everybody has a fantastic night. Thank you for joining us, and we'll chat with you soon.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.